Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for August the 5th. Today we are reading together in 1 Kings chapter 10, which is going to give us some more detail about the fame that Solomon has accrued over time, also about the wealth that Solomon has accrued over time. And that isn't necessarily a good thing. And we're going to make a couple of notes concerning that as we get through the text. Let me get what we have up on the screen for us here. The text, 1 Kings chapter 10. And then we will read along together here, beginning verse number 1. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse number 1. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse number 1, the Queen of Sheba heard about Solomon's fame connected with the name of Yahweh and came to test him with difficult questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very large entourage, with camels bearing spices, gold in great abundance, and special stones. She came to Solomon and spoke to him about everything that was on her mind. So Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too difficult for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba observed all of Solomon's wisdom, the palace he had built, the food at his table, his servants' residence, his attendant service and their attire, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he offered at Yahweh's temple, it took her breath away. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my country about your words and about your wisdom is true. But I didn't believe the reports until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, I was not even told half. Your wisdom and prosperity far exceed the report I heard. How happy are your men? How happy are these servants of yours who always stand in your presence hearing your wisdom? Blessed be Yahweh your God. He delighted in you and put you on the throne of Israel because of Yahweh's eternal love for Israel. He has made you king to carry out justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 4.5 tons of gold, a great quantity of spices and precious stones. Never again did such a quantity of spices arrive as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. In addition, Hiram's fleet that carried gold from Ophir brought from Ophir a large quantity of almug wood and precious stones. The king made the almug wood into steps for Yahweh's temple and the king's palace, and into lyres and harps for the singers. Never again did such almug wood arrive, and the like has not been seen again. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba her every desire, whatever she asked, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she, along with her servants, returned to her own country. The weight of the gold that came to Solomon annually was 25 tons, besides what came from the merchants, traders, merchandise, and all of the Arabian kings and governors of the land. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 15 pounds of gold went into each shield. He made 300 small shields of hammered gold. Nearly 4 pounds of gold went into each shield. The king put in the house of the forest of, or the king put these shields, in the house of the foreign of Lebanon. The king also made a very large ivory throne and overlaid it with fine gold. The throne had 6 steps. There was a rounded top at the back of the throne, armrests on either side of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the armrest. 12 lions were standing there on the 6 steps, one in each end. Nothing like it had ever been made in any other kingdom. All of King Solomon's drinking cups were gold, and all the utensils of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. There was no silver, since it was considered as nothing in Solomon's time. For the king had ships of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's fleet, and once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish would arrive bearing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the world in riches and in wisdom. The whole world wanted an audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom that God had put in his heart. Every man would bring his annual tribute, items of silver, gold, clothing, weapons, spices, and horses and mules. Solomon accumulated 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, and stationed them in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedar as abundant as sycamore in the Judean foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and Kue. The king's traders brought them from Kue at the going price. A chariot was imported from Egypt for 15 pounds of silver, and a horse for 4 pounds. In the same way, they imported they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of Aram through their agents. And that is 1 Kings chapter 10. 1 Kings chapter 10 begins, of course, with the well-known, I'd say probably pretty well-known story of the Queen of Sheba coming and meeting with Solomon. This would be either in modern-day Yemen or modern-day Ethiopia. They're just not exactly sure where exactly this ancient kingdom is from. There's another name that is known by Sabea, S-A-B-E-A. But again, just not entirely sure where exactly this is, but in a general vicinity, southwest portion of Arabia. Nevertheless, it is Solomon's fame that drew this queen to come and to get to know Solomon. But she came not just to get to know him, but she came, and in fact, it seems to test him with riddles. She came, her entourage was very impressive, but she came and she spoke to Solomon about everything that was on her mind. And the text says that Solomon answered all of her questions. There was nothing too difficult for the king to explain to her. I mean, this is probably a lot of questions concerning how to rule, maybe some advice on particular legal issues that maybe she had to deal with, particular judgments that she would have to make as the royalty of her kingdom. Maybe there are some questions about how to deal with other nations, political things. There's just so much that this queen could have asked Solomon, and again, she believes that he is the exact person to ask because of the great wisdom that he possesses. Now, not only did she ask him questions, but she also just observed everything that was going on with Solomon here in his kingdom, and she was impressed, very much impressed with so many things. Was not just Solomon's wisdom, but the palace he had built, the food at the table, the residents, his attendant service, their attire, the cupbearers, the burnt offerings. It says it took our breath away. Now, for most of us, I would probably recognize that these are probably attention to detail that a female would be much more concerned with than guys. I don't think I would probably be all that concerned with, the servant's residence or their service or their attire, things of that nature. But again, this woman of great power, she probably very much cued into attention to detail, and she just considers all of it, from his wisdom to these small details to even the worship that he offered at the temple. All of it, it says, took her breath away. She was so incredibly impressed, and she expresses that to Solomon. She's like, the everything that I heard about you and your kingdom and your wisdom, everything, it is incredibly true. But I didn't believe it till I saw it with my own eyes. But now that I've come and seen it, I recognize that it was completely undersold. This is so much more than even I thought it could be. Look at, again, how happy your men are, how happy your servants are. And then she offers this blessing to Yahweh. Blessed be Yahweh your God. He delighted in you and put you on the throne of Israel because of Yahweh's eternal love for Israel. He has made you king to carry out justice and righteousness. Now, certainly, we've mentioned before that Solomon does seem to be concerned with justice. I don't know about the righteousness part, though, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know about that, because many of the things we're going to see as we go throughout the rest of this text shows us that Solomon doesn't seem to be very concerned with the will of Yahweh, because he very directly breaks many of the commands that we see in Deuteronomy 17 about the way that kings were supposed to behave as the kings of Israel. But we'll get to that in a moment. She ends up giving a ton of things to Solomon, 4.5 tons of gold, a great quantity of spices, precious stones. It says never had anything been seen like that, and never has anything been seen since then. Then we're also given details concerning Solomon and Hiram's fleet that would go down to Ophir and to get stones. We'll also see some particular wood that was used in the building of the temple and such. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba her every desire, whatever she asked. besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty, and then she and her servants departed from there. So seems they have a strong working relationship here between Solomon and this queen. Again, all this gets back to Solomon's fame being well known among the nations around. Certainly, you have to imagine that the incredible rocket ship of advancement that Israel has undertaken as far as political power and wealth and such has certainly caught the attention of many who are around him. We also see this is true about many merchants and traders and the Arabian kings, the governors of the land, all of them with everything that they gave. The text says the weight of gold that came to Solomon annually was 25 tons. And what did he do with some of that gold? Well, he made them into shields. He made 200 large shields of hammered gold, 15 pounds of gold into each of those shields. He made 300 small shields of hammered gold, nearly 4 pounds of gold in each of them. And then it says that the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon, so his palace. It seems that he decorated with these golden shields. He also put gold over his ivory throne. He had a bunch of lions that are standing out there. Pretty impressive that he can make them all stand still for so long. I'm just kidding. They're obviously probably some sort of statue, maybe made out of gold themselves. I don't exactly know. But everything about Solomon and his kingdom, it was just of the highest class that you can think of, from at least showing off his wealth. His wealth was, again, exorbitant. Let's think about that, though. Is that a good thing? Was it a good thing for Solomon's wealth to be exorbitant? Again, I want to suggest to you that whereas nations of the world, and we'll see this, I will actually go and highlight it, in talking about everything that Solomon was able to accomplish and the wealth that he was able to accrue. Silver was considered nothing during his time. The text even says that Solomon surpassed all the kings of the world in riches and wisdom, of course. And that's the difficult thing here, that we have this wisdom, but this wisdom seems to be leading to political affluence, not much from a spiritual perspective. We haven't heard that much. Yes, we heard about the offerings that he offered in the temple. We hear about some of that here, but again, where's the emphasis all within this text? It's on the affluence. It's on the material wealth that Solomon has accrued, and there does not seem to be much emphasis on spiritual things. We see him accumulating 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horsemen. We see him as well that he had horses that were imported from Egypt and Kuwait. So mentioning all this, let's address Deuteronomy 17. I want to just read Deuteronomy 17, beginning at verse 14. The text says, when you enter the land Yahweh, your God, is giving you, take possession of it, live in it, and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations around you. You are to appoint over you the king Yahweh your God chooses. Appoint a king from your brothers. You are not to set a foreigner over you, or one who is not one of your people. However, notice this, he must not acquire many horses for himself. I don't know about you, but 1,400 chariots, meaning 12,000 horsemen, that sounds like a lot. Or, notice this even more, or send the people back to Egypt to acquire many horses. What do we see here? We see this directly being violated by Solomon within this text, that he imported horses from Egypt. Direct violation. He must not acquire many wives for himself, so his heart won't go astray. Put that in your back pocket for tomorrow's reading in chapter 11. And he must not acquire a very large amount of silver and gold for himself. Well, what did we just read? We just read that he was bringing in 25 tons of gold each year. Solomon's breaking these very specific commandments, and there's no way to get around that. So what we have here, again, are more seeds of trouble, things that might not necessarily be showing themselves as problematic right here in this moment, but they are going to show themselves as problems here soon. And in fact, one of those seeds of trouble is at the very end of chapter 10, where it says that they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of Aram through their agents. You know, these nations, they're going to come back to bite Solomon and Israel in the rear end, because they're going to be thorns in the side of Israel for many, many decades and centuries to come. And not what if, but I wonder how much of what he sold to them ended up being used against them. Again, we appreciate and we're glad for the wisdom that Solomon is showing in being so successful politically. And of course, that is attractive to the nations around. And of course, that impresses all these other rulers. But is that what is most important? I'm going to suggest it's not. Solomon's priorities were out of whack. Yes, it's good for him to be blessed, but it seems that that's where he put the majority, if not all, of his effort and wisdom, was into the political things, accumulating wealth, accumulating power, setting himself up as being the strongest kingdom in the world. And you know what stinks about that the most is that he was actually doing a lot of what God wanted. God wanted for his people to draw the nations closer, but so that they might be impressed with their God, not necessarily their affluence, their wealth, their political power, their might. How great it would have been for Solomon to emphasize faith and spirituality within Israel and have that be the reason why the nations flocked to him, not just because he had great wisdom that led to great political power and influence. Lots to think about here concerning Solomon. Very complicated character, I will suggest to you. A lot of things that we might really appreciate, but again, a lot of seeds of trouble that I think are getting ready to sprout and begin to bear bad fruit. So we'll be looking at that as we get into 1 Kings chapter 11 tomorrow. I appreciate you tuning in for this reading on this Tuesday. Hope that you had a great long weekend, and I hope that you'll be back with us again tomorrow as we read from 1 Kings chapter 11. I have some birthdays to shout out. So Lindsay's birthday was Saturday. Craig's birthday was yesterday. And Sarah's birthday, Matthew's birthday is today. Very happy birthday to all of them. I know Lindsay and Glenda really enjoyed having Lindsay's family in this weekend. It was great seeing them on Sunday. Really enjoyed that. Especially great to meet little Amber, meet her for the first time. Last time we saw her, she was in her mama's belly, so it was really cool to see her out in the open now and growing and being super cute. I know again they appreciate that visit. We appreciate Lindsay and Craig and Sarah and everything that they mean to our church family. Hope they had great birthdays, and Sarah, hope you have a great birthday today as well. Everybody have a great rest of your Tuesday. May God bless you in all that you do. And again, hope to see you tomorrow as we read together from 1 Kings chapter 11. Take care and God bless.